Let me ask you something honest before we even get started. How many times have you said, "This time is different"? How many times have you started the prayer challenge, started the budget, started the journal, started waking up early, and meant every single word of it, only to find yourself 3 or 4 weeks later right back where you started? Maybe even a little worse off because now there's a layer of guilt sitting on top of everything else. If that hits close to home, I need you to stay with me today, because we are not going to talk about another routine. We are not going to talk about another habit stack or another 5-step plan. What we are going to talk about today is the thing underneath all of that. The thing that, if it doesn't change, guarantees that nothing else will. We're talking about your mindset, and not in the surface level, motivational poster kind of way. I mean the deep internal operating system that is running in the background every single day, shaping how you see money, how you see God, how you see yourself, and ultimately how far you are willing to let yourself go. Because here is the truth that nobody wants to say out loud. You can have a perfect prayer routine and a perfect budget, and if your mindset is broken, you will eventually sabotage your own progress. Every single time. I've watched it happen to people who genuinely love God, people who are talented, people who are faithful, people who are showing up. They start the 21-day challenge, they open the savings account, they're doing everything right on the outside, and then by day 30, something shifts and they're right back at the beginning wondering what went wrong. And I want to tell you what went wrong, because it is not what most people think. They tried to change their actions without changing their identity. That's it, that is the whole thing. You cannot sustain a new behavior from an old belief system. It doesn't work. It's like putting fresh paint on a wall that's rotting from the inside. It might look okay for a little while, but eventually it's going to crack. And when it does, you're going to blame yourself and you're going to say, "I'm just not disciplined enough," or "I'm just not good with money," or "maybe this level of breakthrough just isn't for me." But that's not the truth. The truth is that you were trying to run at the next level with a mindset that was designed for where you used to be, and that ends today. So if you are tired of the 1 step forward, 2 steps back cycle, if you are tired of praying for breakthroughs and then watching yourself walk right past them, this one is for you. Let's get into it. The poverty spirit versus the stewardship mind. I want to start here because this is the root of almost everything. A lot of us, and I say us because I include myself in this, grew up in environments where lack was the language, where just enough was considered a blessing, where even the idea of having more than you needed felt almost suspicious, like you were being greedy or forgetting where you came from. And I understand that. I'm not dismissing those environments or the people in them. But what I am saying is that when you grow up hearing, "We can't afford that," and "money doesn't grow on trees," and "rich people are this way or that way," that becomes the lens through which you see the world. And it follows you into adulthood. It follows you into your prayer life. It follows you into your bank account. We touched on this in a previous video, the hidden reason your prayers haven't solved your poverty, and if you haven't watched that one, I'll link it for you. But what I want to build on today is this idea of what I call the poverty spirit. Now, the poverty spirit isn't just about not having money. This is important. The poverty spirit is a mindset. It's the part of you that, even when God blesses you with more, is already looking for the next crisis. You get the job, and instead of celebrating, you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. You get out of debt, and within 6 months you're right back in it because something in you felt more comfortable there. You receive a financial blessing, and instead of stewarding it, you spend it immediately because some part of you doesn't believe it's going to last. That is the poverty spirit at work, and it is not your fault that it's there, but it is your responsibility to deal with it. Because here's what the word says about who you are. God did not call you to be a survivor, He called you to be an heir, and those are 2 completely different postures. A survivor is always in emergency mode. A survivor is calculating, anxious, holding everything tight because they don't know when the next drought is coming. But an heir doesn't panic when things are low, because an heir knows the father's resources are infinite. An heir is not shaken by a difficult season, because an heir understands they are not defined by the season. That has to become your default setting. You have to stop viewing your life through the lens of what you don't have and start viewing it through the lens of what God is able to do. And that is not positive thinking. That is not manifesting. That is biblical. That is faith. Hebrews 11:1 says faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, which means you have to be able to see it in your spirit before you see it in your bank account. And that requires a shift, a real one. The 3 major shifts. So let's talk about the specific shifts, because I don't want this to stay theoretical. I want you to walk away from this video with something you can actually apply. Shift number 1, from I have to I get to. This one sounds small. It is not small. When you say I have to pray, discipline feels like a burden. It feels like homework. It feels like one more thing on an already long list. But when you shift to I get to pray, when you actually absorb what that means, everything changes. I get to speak directly to the God who created the universe. I get to bring my fears, my questions, my gratitude, my confusion, and lay all of it down in front of the one who holds everything together. I get to do that. That is a privilege that billions of people throughout history have died for the right to access freely. When you see it that way, you don't have to drag yourself to prayer. You want to be there. And the same thing applies to your finances. I have to budget sounds like restriction. I get to be intentional with what God has already trusted me with sounds like purpose. Same action, completely different energy, and that energy determines whether you quit or whether you keep going. Shift your language, and I promise you, you will shift your entire posture. Shift number 2, from scarcity to seed. This one is for everyone who has ever looked at their account balance and felt their chest tighten. A scarcity mindset looks at $100 and sees not enough, and that's an honest response. I understand it. But a stewardship mindset looks at that same $100 and asks a different question. It asks, how much of this is bread for me and how much of this is seed for the kingdom? When you start seeing your resources as seeds, everything changes. Because a farmer doesn't mourn what they plant. A farmer plants intentionally, knowing that what goes into the ground is going to come back multiplied. And that's not just financial wisdom, that is a spiritual principle that runs through the entire Bible. Give and it shall be given unto you, pressed down, shaken together, running over. But you cannot activate that principle from a scarcity mindset, because from scarcity, every dollar you give away feels like a loss. But from a stewardship mindset, every dollar you give with intentionality is a seed you are releasing into soil that God Himself tends. You stop fearing the harvest when you understand that the harvest was never the point. The obedience is the point, and the harvest is just God being faithful to His own word. Shift number 3, from me to generational. This is the big one, and I need you to really sit with this. If you are only praying for your bills to be paid, if the ceiling of your prayer life is your personal comfort, your vision is too small. And I say that with love because I know how heavy those personal burdens are. I'm not minimizing the weight of debt or financial stress, but I am saying that when you zoom out, when you start praying and planning and building with a generational lens, something happens in your spirit. Suddenly, it's not just about you surviving. It's about your children not having to start where you started. It's about your grandchildren inheriting land, not debt. It's about you being the one who breaks the cycle in your family line so that the generations after you get to start at a different place. That is a different kind of motivation, and that motivation is sustainable in a way that personal comfort is not. Because on the days when discipline is hard, and it will be hard, I want to be comfortable might not be enough to get you out of bed, but I am building something that my grandchildren will benefit from. That gets you up. This is exactly what we have been building toward in the comments and in the community conversations over the past several weeks. So many of you have shared that you are the first in your family to even think about generational wealth. You are the first to talk about it. You are the first to pray about it specifically. And I want you to know that first is not a burden. First is a calling. You were chosen to be the one who turns the ship around. Now I want you to do something that might feel a little uncomfortable, and I want you to do it anyway. I want you to say your new identity out loud, not in your head, out loud. Because there's something that happens when your mouth agrees with what God says about you. There's an alignment that takes place that thinking alone cannot produce. So hear me on this. You are not trying to be disciplined. You are a disciplined child of God. You are not trying to get out of debt. You are a faithful steward of God's wealth, and you manage His resources with wisdom and integrity. You are not hoping things will get better. You are walking in the confidence that what God started, He is faithful to complete. The Bible says it plainly, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Proverbs 23:7, not as a man wishes, not as a man prays occasionally, as a man thinks in his heart. Your consistent, deep-level belief about yourself is what you will ultimately live out. Which means if you don't think like a conqueror, you will not live like one, no matter how many good habits you try to stack on top. This is why the mindset shift is not optional. It is not the bonus material after you get the other stuff right. It is the foundation. It is what holds the discipline and the stewardship together. Without it, everything else eventually crumbles. With it, even your setbacks become setups. Here is where I want to land with you today. This video is the final piece of a larger conversation we have been having about discipline and stewardship, and what it actually looks like to live out our faith in a practical, transformative way. If you've been walking with me through this series, if you've watched the videos on building your prayer discipline and thinking about stewardship differently, then this is the piece that holds all of it together. Because you can know the right things to do, you can have the best intentions, but if you do not deal with the internal belief system, if you do not choose, deliberately and repeatedly, to see yourself the way God sees you, the knowing will never become living. And I believe you are ready to live differently. I genuinely believe that, otherwise you wouldn't still be here at this point in the video. You are not a casual consumer. You are someone who is actually hungry for change, and I want to honor that by being straight with you. The shift is yours to make. God has already done his part. He has already declared who you are. He has already made provision. He has already placed calling on your life, but you have to choose to agree with it every single day until it becomes the thing you default to instead of the thing you have to remind yourself of. That is the work, and it is worth it. So for the final declaration of this series, I want you to do one thing. Type new mindset in the comments right now if you are ready to think differently so that you can live differently. I read every single one, and I want to celebrate this moment with you. Thank you for being part of the prayer sanctuary. From the bottom of my heart, this community continues to show up, to ask hard questions, to grow, and to push each other forward. That means everything. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this one with somebody who's been in that 1 step forward, 2 steps back cycle, because this might be exactly the word they need today. Let's keep growing, let's keep praying, let's keep breaking those cycles. I'll see you in the next one.